Hey, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. It is I, your old friend Dale Howard, back in the saddle again doing a Sensei public webinar. Feels good to be back. Today, the topic is the mysterious what is effort driven and how does it work? It is I, Dale Howard, the Director of Education for Sensei Project Solutions. Currently, I'm one of only 39 Microsoft Project MVPs, or Most Valuable Professionals, in the entire world. That is an honorary title Microsoft bestowed on me 15 years ago. I'm up for renewal. I'll find out sometime in June, hoping I get renewed for another year. Currently, I am the co-author of 21 different books on Microsoft Project, Project Online, and Project Server. I've used every version of Microsoft Project dating clear back to version 4.0 for Windows 95, heading now toward my 21st anniversary of using the tool for the very first time. That'll be September of this year. I've also used every version of Microsoft's PPM tool since it was introduced under the original name of Project Central way back in the year 2000. Today I am speaking to you live, but not in person, from my home office here in Ellisville, Missouri. I am in a west suburb of St. Louis, and it is raining here today. The grass is happy about that. My employer, Sensei Project Solutions, few things I wanted to share. We were Microsoft's PPM Partner of the Year winner back in 2014. We were a finalist in both 2015, 2017, hoping to be Partner of the Year again this year, but that's up to Microsoft, not to us. We've done hundreds of deployments of the Microsoft PPM tools, Project Online and Project Server, trained over 5,000 users along the way. We have clients all around the world. We truly do have a global impact. All right, so let's dig right into the content for today. This webinar today actually would be considered part two of the webinar that my compatriot Rafael Santos delivered last month. Last month, he talked about task types and how they work. So let's just do a real quick review of task types together. The purpose of task types, if you were able to attend last month, you may recall task type is meant to fix or lock one of three variables in the duration equation. You can specify for any task individually that its task type is either fixed units, where the units value will be locked when you assign resources, or you can specify the task type as fixed work, which means when you assign resources, the work value will be locked. Or you can make the task type be fixed duration, which will lock the duration of the task so that the duration will not change. Now, do know this also. In the duration equation, when you change one of the numbers that is not fixed, Microsoft Project will never change the fixed variable. So for example, on a fixed units task, if I change the work, the software will not change the units. Instead, it will recalculate the duration. Now, why am I telling you all of this, ladies and gentlemen? The reason is this: the effort-driven feature and functionality directly interacts with task types. They go together like hand in glove. Okay, so now that we've got a little review under our belts, what in the world is this effort-driven business in Microsoft Project? I will tell you this: when I poked a little bit of fun lightly at the title of my presentation when I said the very mysterious effort-driven feature. That is kind of a mystery to people. Both task types and effort-driven are mysterious. So here's what effort-driven is all about. Effort-driven describes the behavior of Microsoft Project when you do one of the following. Number one, you add a resource as a helper to a task that already has at least one resource previously assigned. See, there's the key. You've already got somebody assigned. Later, you add another resource or several as helpers. Second behavior, you remove a resource from a task that already has two or more resources assigned initially. See again, there's the key. When you do something with the resources later, you either add a helper to a task that already has at least one person assigned, or you remove one of the helpers from a task where you have two or more people assigned initially. Now, very importantly, you need to know this. The effort-driven feature has nothing to do at all with how many resources you assign to a task initially. For example, I need 3 resources to work on a particular task all at the same time. I add Mickey Cobb, Calvin Baker, and Sarah Noel. Add all 3 to the task all at once. Effort-driven has nothing to do with that at all. It's adding helpers later or removing a resource where the task already has 2 or more resources assigned initially. Now, on an effort-driven task, most people describe it as this way, and this is valid for the moment. I'll show you we need to go a little deeper, but most people say that on an effort-driven task, Microsoft Project holds the work constant while you add or remove resources. What the software will do is it will split the work proportionately between all of the assigned resources. Again, that's when you add a helper or you remove a resource from a task that already has 2 or more resources assigned. Now, the reason that we add helpers, think about this, ladies and gentlemen, one of the techniques we use to crash the critical path in a slipping schedule is to shorten the duration of tasks by adding helper. And what we call that is shorten the duration of effort-driven tasks by adding helpers. Now, I also want you to realize that in the real world, not all tasks are effort-driven. A prime example of this is driving a school bus route. It takes one bus driver 2 hours to drive the route. If you add another bus driver into that same bus, it'll still take that bus 2 hours to drive the route. That's a good example of a non-effort-driven task. So with the theory and background in mind, how do we actually set the effort-driven value for any task? We can actually use one of 3 methods. First method, we apply the task entry view. That's that split screen view with the Gantt chart in the top pane, task form in the bottom pane. And then in the task form pane, we either select or deselect the effort-driven checkbox. When it's selected, the task is effort-driven. When it's deselected, the task is non-effort-driven. Second method, we can also double-click any task and then go to the advanced page of the task information dialog, where we will also find an effort-driven checkbox there. And again, we can select it to make the task effort-driven, or deselect it to make the task non-effort driven. And then thirdly, another option is to insert the effort-driven column in any task view, such as the Gantt chart view. That actually makes it really nice and easy, a fast way to specify the effort-driven value. So if the task is going to be effort-driven in the column, we select a yes value. If it's not going to be effort-driven, we select a no value. All right, so let's go ahead and start the demo for today. So let me demonstrate these three methods for setting the effort-driven value. The first method, I'm going to use a little trick here. I'll right-click anywhere in the Gantt chart pane, and on the shortcut menu, I'll choose the item called Show Split. What this does is this displays the task entry view, Gantt chart view in the top pane, task form view in the bottom pane. I'll select the task design P1. In the bottom pane, everybody please notice this innocent little looking checkbox called effort driven. By default, it is selected in this particular project, so that task is an effort driven task. You'd never know it just by looking at the task, would you? All right, so that's one method. Let me go ahead and close the pane. Second method, we can also double click on a task. Then we have to go to the Advanced tab in the Task Information dialog. Now in this dialog, want you all to notice down near the bottom and over on the right, there it is again. Just doesn't jump off the screen at you, but there's the little effort-driven checkbox. In this task, the build P1 task, you can see it is effort-driven because the checkbox is selected. Now, a method that I really like, and I would encourage you to use this, as you look at these tasks, you cannot tell just by looking whether the task is effort-driven or not. So what I recommend you consider doing is this: insert the effort-driven column at least temporarily in any Gantt chart view. So ladies and gentlemen, now look at this. Every task, regular or detailed task in phase 1 is effort-driven, and every detailed or subtask in the phase 2 section is effort-driven as well. And now I could just very quickly and easily change the value of the effort-driven field for one or more tasks as I need to do. All right, let's get back to the PowerPoint and we'll continue on. Now in Microsoft Project, one thing you can do is you can specify the default effort-driven value for every new task that you add to a Microsoft Project schedule. The way you'll do this is by clicking File, Options. In the Project Options dialog, you navigate to the Schedule page. And about halfway or so down the page, there's a section called Scheduling Options for this project. There you can select or deselect the new tasks are effort-driven checkbox as you need to, and then you click the OK button. Now, I do want to be very clear about this, that using this procedure will only set the default effort-driven value for new tasks. It's only for new tasks you add to the schedule later. It will not impact any existing task. So let's go see where this is. So I'm going to click File, Options, Schedule. We'll go about halfway down the page. Here's the section, Scheduling Options for this project. Ladies and gentlemen, there is the checkbox option in question. New tasks are effort-driven. Now, if effort-driven defines the behavior of what happens when you add helpers to a task, if you want durations to shorten, and that's going to be the way you want most tasks to behave in Microsoft Project, you'll deselect, or you will select that checkbox. If that isn't the behavior you want, you'd deselect the checkbox. Now, do also know while we're here that I can click this scheduling options for this project pick list and choose the option for all new projects. Now, that's for all new projects created from the blank template in Microsoft Project. So you can see right now for all new projects, I don't have this checkbox selected. If I wanted that to be the option of choice, I can select it and click OK. So that's how we set the default option for all new tasks. But let us continue. So how do we actually set the effort-driven value for multiple tasks and be able to do it quickly? Here's the process you would use for 2 or more tasks that need to be changed. 1, you'll select the block of tasks. That makes sense. Then you'll go to the task ribbon, and in the properties section of the task ribbon, you'll click the button called information. Now, what Microsoft Project will do is display a dialog called multiple task information. You'll go to the advanced tab. And on the advanced page, you'll either select the effort-driven checkbox to make all of the selected tasks effort-driven, or you'll deselect it to make all of them non-effort-driven. And then you'll click the OK button. So let's go ahead and see how that works as well. So ladies and gentlemen, right now in this project, we can see that every task is currently effort-driven, every regular detailed tasks. Summary tasks are never effort-driven, and that's something you can't change. You can only change it for detailed or what I call sub-tasks. So I would like to change all of these to non-effort-driven. So here's the fast way to do it. I'll click the Select All button one time. That's that blank button immediately above the row 0 ID number. That's just like in Excel, isn't it? That selects every task. And then here in the task ribbon, over on the far right end, I'll go to the Information button. Again, as promised, that displays a very special dialog called Multiple Task Information. In this dialog, I'll go to the Advanced page. Halfway down, here's the little effort-driven checkbox. What I need to do is click as many times as is necessary until the checkbox is cleared. In that case, it only took one click, and look now, the effort-driven checkbox is not selected. And when I click OK, bingo, ladies and gentlemen, there is the desired behavior. Every task is now non-effort driven. All right, let me go ahead and get rid of this sample file, and we'll get another one open. And let's get back to our PowerPoint slide presentation. And now let's see with our own eyes the interaction between the effort-driven feature and the task type feature. So in this first table, I'm going to show you and fill in. We are assuming that the tasks are effort-driven. That means the effort-driven checkbox is selected for the task. So on a fixed units task where the units value is locked, if we add a helper, the duration will be shortened automatically. If we remove a helper from a task that has 2 or more resources already assigned, the duration will be increased. both of those behaviors are described as effort-driven behaviors. Adding a helper, duration is shortened. Removing a helper, duration is increased. It's exactly the same with a fixed work task. On a fixed work task, the work is locked. If you add a helper, the duration is shortened. If you remove a helper, the duration is increased. On a fixed duration task, it's a little bit different. Excuse me, everybody, because on a fixed duration task, the duration value is locked, so it cannot change. So when we add a helper, the duration is held constant. But what happens is the work is held constant as well, and it's actually split between the existing resources that are assigned already and the new helper. If we remove a helper on a task, the duration again is held constant, and in this case, the work is now increased. So let's go ahead and take a look and see how this actually behaves in the real world. So on this particular task, I want you all to notice the task type is fixed units. It is an effort-driven task. We have Calvin Baker working full-time, 80 hours, spread over a duration of 10 days. If we add the helper, Cindy McNair, and we say Cindy is going to work full-time, ladies and gentlemen, that is all of the information you put in when you're adding a helper. You don't do anything with the work column. Pick the name of the resource that'll be helping, put in whether they'll work full-time or part-time, and click OK. Bingo, look what Microsoft Project just did. Duration is shortened to 5 days. The 80 hours of work is redistributed between Calvin and Cindy based on their respective units value. In this case, the work is split proportionately. Each resource gets half the work. Now let's go to the task build P1. This task is fixed work. I want you also to notice that the effort-driven checkbox option is grayed out. That is because of the nature of a fixed work task. On a fixed work task, the work is automatically locked. That means you cannot make any change to effort driven. So we've got Gary Hayward working on this task full time for 80 hours, again over a duration of 10 days. If we give Gary a helper named Henry Baum, and Henry is only going to be able to help part-time because Henry is involved in another project at this time, but he can at least help out half-time. Gary's going to do the bulk of the work, and Henry's only going to pick up part of it. So when I click OK, we can now see this with our own eyes. Look, Gary gets 53 1/3 hours. Henry gets 26.67. That's actually a 2/3, 1/3 split based proportionately on the units values. And then the duration is shortened to 6.67 days. So that's another factor to consider when you use effort driven. What happens if you add a helper who is not going to be working full time on the task? So now let's go ahead and click the button called Next, and that'll take me to the third task, Task P1. Everybody notice on this task, it is fixed duration. It is also effort driven. The duration is locked. We have Marcia Bickle working full-time, 80 hours for a duration of 10 days. We're going to give her the helper, Mickey Cobb. And on this task, Mickey will be working full-time. When I click the OK button, look at that. The duration does not change. Why not? Because the task type is fixed duration. That number is locked, so the software is not allowed to change it. Marcia was assigned to 80 hours of work. Now the work is actually split proportionately between her and her helper, Mickey Cobb. All right, now let's do one more. The task implement P1. This is a fixed units task. It is effort driven. We have the resource Pancho Bowie working on this task full time, 80 hours, duration of 10 days. We're going to add the helper Terry Euland. Terry will be working full time, so we would reasonably expect that the 80 hours of work will be distributed 40 and 40, and the duration will be cut to only 5 days. Ladies and gentlemen, when I click OK, that is not what happened. What in the world is going on here? What I actually wanted to do was take you a little deeper. Let me scroll over to the right to show you the Gantt bar for this task. Ladies and gentlemen, I led you down the primrose path, but I didn't tell you one thing. This task already had progress entered against it. It was actually showing, I didn't point it out to you here, but there was a percent complete value that was showing up in the bottom pane. So what I'm going to do is right click here in the bottom pane, the task form pane. I'm going to choose the work set of details because this will actually show us what is going on in this particular task. 80 hours of work was originally assigned to Pancho Bowie. He had done 40 hours of actual work before we added the helper. Because he'd already done 40, there was only 40 hours of remaining work. That 40 of remaining work was split proportionately between Pancho and Terry. Now, where does this work value come from of 60? In Microsoft Project, the actual formula for work is actual work plus remaining work. 40 plus 20 is 60. 0 plus 20 is 20. So that is what happens when you add a resource to a task where the task is already in progress. Now, let me go ahead and bring up the slide that actually fully documents this for you. Everybody, on an effort-driven task, what really happens behind the scenes is that Microsoft Project holds the remaining work constant while you add or remove resources. If a task has not started yet, remaining work and work are identical. Microsoft Project will simply split the work between the original resource and the newly added helper. On an in-progress task, however, Microsoft Project can only split the remaining work between the original resource and the newly added helper. The software will never, ever split the actual work between the resources. All right, so let's continue on the interaction between effort-driven and task types. So in this table, I want to show you the expected behaviors when the effort-driven checkbox is deselected, meaning that the task is non-effort driven. So on a fixed units task, if you add a helper, here's what will happen. The duration will be held constant. Duration won't change, but the work will actually be increased. If we remove a helper on a task with 2 or more resources, the duration will be held constant and the work will be reduced accordingly. On a fixed work task, it is not possible, as I showed you, to deselect the effort-driven checkbox, therefore nothing to show or describe. And on a fixed duration task, remember the duration is locked, so if we add a helper On a non-effort driven task, the duration will be held constant. The work will be increased. If you remove a helper, the duration will be held constant and the work will be reduced. So let's go ahead and see how that actually works. So I'm going to select the task Design P2. I want you all to notice it's a fixed units, non-effort driven task. See how the effort driven checkbox is deselected. We have Calvin Baker once again assigned to this task, working full-time, 80 hours, duration of 10 days. If we give Calvin a helper, Cindy McNair, working full-time, here's what happens. The duration does not change, and the work is actually doubled. It just went from 80 to 160. See how the work was calculated for Cindy. All right, next task, I wanted to remind you, this is a fixed work task. See how the effort-driven checkbox cannot be deselected? So nothing to show there. We cannot make a fixed work task non-effort driven. Now let's go to the final task, test P2. This task is fixed duration, non-effort driven. We have Marcia Bickle assigned working full-time, 80 hours, duration of 10 days. Let's give her a helper. We'll assign Mickey Cobb, working full-time. When I click OK, here's what happens. Notice the duration, excuse me please. Notice the duration does not change. Notice the work is increased. Increase from 80 hours originally, now to 160. So ladies and gentlemen, those are the default behaviors in Microsoft Project with effort-driven scheduling. So now let's go ahead and entertain your questions. Matt is asking, can we download this presentation? If so, how? Matt, yes, I will be emailing a copy of this presentation probably after lunch here this afternoon. So everybody will get a PDF copy of the presentation for your own reference. So good question, Matt. Thank you for asking. Does anybody else have a question? Well, we're all still here together. All right, if not, ladies and gentlemen, let me say thank you to all of you for attending our webinar today. We sure appreciate it. We hope to see you at our monthly webinar next month. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.